Greetings, culture enthusiasts. Picture this. The year is around 3264 Cal BCE. A civilization is flourishing in Northern Europe, stretching from the Rhine to the Volga and from Scandinavia to Switzerland. This culture, known to us today as the corded ware culture, is named for its distinctive pottery decorated with cord-like patterns. But what if I told you that this ancient civilization holds the key to understanding the origins of the Indo-European languages we speak today? Intriguing, isn't it? Take, for instance, the Plinkaigalis242 sample. This Bronze Age woman represents the earliest representatives of the corded ware culture in the Baltics, dating back to somewhere between 3264 to 2625 Cal BCE. Before this time, the Baltics were inhabited by hunter-gatherers who did not speak Indo-European languages. The corded ware culture is considered significant in the history of the Indo-European languages, a family that includes everything from English and German to Persian and Hindi. Current theories suggest that this culture was the Indo-European offshoot that ventured into South Central Asia, spreading the seeds of these languages far and wide. But the story gets even more interesting. Remarkably, there are extensive linguistic similarities between the Baltic languages and Sanskrit, the ancient language of India. Words for sun, man, sheep, smoke, foot, and fire in Baltic languages bear a striking resemblance to their Sanskrit counterparts. These similarities suggest a deep, shared history between these languages. Evidence of early Indo-Iranian loanwords in Baltic languages further supports this theory. Words for donkey, lamb, and dog in Baltic languages are believed to have been borrowed from the Indo-Iranians, suggesting direct contact between these cultures. This linguistic borrowing extends beyond the Baltic and exists in various Slavic and Germanic languages too, such as Russian. The Russian word for dog, sobaka, is derived from the early Indo-Aryan sva.
Guys, you cannot let AI do its own thing. You gotta monitor it, completely look out for errors, because the way it's pronouncing sabaka is completely messed up. Like, it's painful to hear.
Plinkaigalis242 Bronze Age Lithuanian is an early corded ware woman. Linguistic similarities between the Baltic languages and Sanskrit, along with evidence of early Indo-Iranian loanwords in Baltic and Russian languages, suggest a shared history and direct contact between these cultures. The echoes of this ancient past can still be heard in the languages we speak today. So the next time you say dog in Russian or fire in a Lithuanian, remember, you're not just speaking. You're whispering echoes from the corded ware culture, a culture that, through war, diplomacy, and conquest, spread its language across most of Eurasia. Now, let's get back to the Plinkaigalis242 sample.
Alright, now that we got this AI ridiculousness out of the way, this is what she looked like. This is what this early Baltic corded ware individual looked like. She's predicted to have brown color eyes, snub-shaped nose, and black hair with my NOSHACOT tool. When it comes to my tool for eye shape prediction, she's supposed to have South Asian eye shape, and definitely not Sub-Saharan African or Oceanian or East Asian eye shape. When it comes to my hair shape prediction tool, she's predicted to have straight hair. And with Snipper Free, she's also predicted to have brown eyes and black hair. With Ysec, she's also predicted to have brown eyes and black hair. With Snipper Free, she's predicted to have white skin. Very interesting stuff. She was heterozygous for blue eye haplotype 1 and BEH4, which is kind of interesting because BEH4 is sort of this Mediterranean blue eye mutation and not the typical Northern European blue eye mutation, which is BEH2 and BEH3. So she does not have BEH2 or BEH3, but she does have BEH4, so maybe she could have like lighter brown eye shade rather than dark brown eyes. When it comes to SLC45A2 and ASEEP, she has light European genotype there, so European skin tone. However, if you look at her genotype in SLC45A2, she actually doesn't have any derived alleles there. What that means is she does not have any of the European light skin mutations in SLC45A2, so she might have had darker skin tone indeed. She does have one derived variant in IRF4's a mutation that has to do with red hair, blue eyes, and pale skin. This is a very hunter-gatherer variant. It was super common among European hunter-gatherers and is super uncommon among modern Europeans. Basically, modern Europeans don't really have derived IRF4 outside of maybe Irish people and some people in Scandinavia. Now let's move on to her DRD2 panel, which is the dopamine receptor D2 gene panel. D2 dopamine receptors are most commonly found in the cortex, hippocampus, and hypothalamus. For the pro-phenetine pro variation of DRD2, she's got heterozygous genotype, which means intermediate number of D2 dopamine receptors, intermediate likelihood of being a no-go learner, and intermediate likelihood of schizophrenia. So for Europeans who tend to have AA, this would be a higher likelihood of schizophrenia, and for everybody who's not a European, this would be a lower likelihood of schizophrenia than average. For the second variation, she's got GG, which means lower odds of schizophrenia, less dopamine D2 receptors. For the third variation, which is TAC1, she's got more dopamine D2 receptors, A2 genotype, which is actually typical genotype for everybody else, lower odds for various illnesses such as Parkinson's, ADHD. And for the fourth variation, she's got CC genotype, which means more dopamine D2 receptors, once again a typical genotype, and lower odds of Parkinson's, alcoholism, and the rest. Now let's move on to the DRD1 panel. She's got heterozygous genotype in the first variation, which means various psychiatric risks such as addiction, bipolar, schizophrenia. I'm not sure whether this increases or decreases the amount of D2 dopamine receptors. What it does, I just know that it has a certain risk. And she's got a genotype in the third variation here. The other two are not found. So on the third variation, she's got a genotype which has to do with higher odds of autism and tobacco addiction. Now, when it comes to DRD3 panel, she's genotyped for the first two variations. We're going to talk about them. The first one, which is SER9-GLI, she's got normal genotype in the second variation. She's got AA genotype, which has to do with more rigid behavior, higher odds of autism, and it's usually a non-African genotype. Africans tend to score GG or AG, or mostly G here. Now, when it comes to COMT panel, the very first variation you see at the top here is the VAL-MET variation, which is the warrior gene, right? And she's got AA, which means warrior, which is less COMT enzyme activity, slower dopamine reuptake, more dopamine accumulating in the system. And this is stereotypically European genotype, higher pain sensitivity, advantages in memory and attention tasks. The warrior genotype, which is the G, would be the absolute opposite of this in every regard. When it comes to the second variation, she's got GG genotype there, which is kind of typical genotype for everybody to have. And finally, for the fourth variation, which is also in COMT, she's got TT genotype, which means increase in body mass index and higher risk of endometrial cancer. And finally, for the last variation, which is not even on COMT, but I put it here because it's a warrior gene once again. On MAOA is actually a gene on the X chromosome, so it's a completely different location, completely different thing that it does from COMT, but it does modulate the MAOA enzyme, which does the same thing as the COMT enzyme. It breaks down dopamine. So she's got the genotype, which is GG, which means higher MAOA enzyme activity, which means warrior, which means less dopamine. And this is the absolute opposite of her genotype in COMT. As you can see, if you just look up a little bit, in COMT's VAL-MET variation, she's got warrior, whereas in MAOA, she's got warrior. She does not have any of the mutations associated with hemochromatosis, which is the Celtic curse. Does not have any of the mutations associated with type 2 diabetes, except for one, which you can see is the third one, where she's got CC genotype. And she does not have any of the mutations associated with reduced risk of myopia, so it seems that she would have probably a higher odds of being myopic and having nearsightedness, needing glasses. And she does have the sociopath gene based on her genotype, as you can see, the two genotypes that are in the sociopath panel here in the OXTR. She's got probably a little bit of sociopathic tendencies, sociopathic traits. She does not have any of the Alzheimer's related mutations, so it's probably unlikely, based on her genotypes here, that she would have Alzheimer's. And her polygenic illnesses scores are pretty typical score for Alzheimer's, myopia, and diabetes, and a much higher score for schizophrenia than typical for Central Europeans. And she does not have the European lactose persistence mutation, so probably was lactose intolerant. Now let's move on to her G25 and GED match. With G25, she is closest to various other early corded Ware individuals, and more similar to early corded Ware individuals rather than later corded Ware individuals. Why? Because she's very Yamnaya. She's like 90% Yamnaya and only 10% or only 15% Western hunter-gatherer plus Anatolian Neolithic, so she's very Yamnaya in her ancestry. Closest to various Northern Europeans, but she's also pretty close to various South Central Asians. And this is what she scores with Eurogene's K13. You can see she's scoring 17% West Asian, 6.8% South Asian. That's because Yamnaya had some affinities to South Asians. Yamnaya tends to score a little bit of South Asian with Eurogene's calculators, and with all the other calculators as well. With the oracle closest to Ukrainians, and actually getting modeled as a mixture of Estonian plus Baloch, or Estonian plus Brahvi, or basically a mixture of Estonian and South Central Asian. Very interesting result. Now for MDLPK11, she's actually scoring 35% Caucasus Hunter-Gatherer plus 7% Iran Mesolithic, which is also sort of Caucasus Hunter-Gatherer component, plus 44% European Hunter-Gatherer. And she's actually getting modeled as a mixture of Yamnaya plus Nordic Bronze Age, or Poltavka plus Nordic Bronze Age. And Nordic Bronze Age is already part Yamnaya. Nordic Bronze Age is already like half or 70% Yamnaya, half to 70% Yamnaya. So she's a mixture of Yamnaya plus also half to 70% Yamnaya. Very Yamnaya result, basically. You know, the modern genetic consensus, geneticists' consensus on the matter is that corded ware does not come from Yamnaya directly, it comes from some other Western steppe herder group. Maybe that was very identical to Yamnaya in autosomal DNA, but different in the haplogroups, because this is what we see, there's a big discontinuity between the haplogroups, the paternal DNA of Yamnayans and the corded ware. However, in autosomal ancestry, you can pretty much model corded ware as Yamnaya plus farmer and hunter-gatherer. You can model corded ware as a mixture of Yamnaya plus farmer and hunter-gatherer with a very precise fit. This is what she's scoring with the Decad K12B. She's actually scoring 22% Gedrosia. This is the Caucasus hunter-gatherer / Iranian Neolithic farmer / maybe even BMAG component. That's very typical for various Indo-Europeans in Europe to score. And she's actually getting modeled as a mixture of Finnish plus Brahvi, or actually, yeah, Finnish or Lithuanian plus Brahvi. So this individual, although she was from Lithuania, she was not all that similar, as you can see, to modern Lithuanians. Very different from them. This is what she's scoring with PunDNA LK12. Here you can see that aside from the European hunter-gatherer, Caucasus hunter-gatherer, and Anatolian Neolithic farmer, which are the components that make up corded ware, she's actually also scoring 6.4% South Asian, and this is due to the affinities that existed between the Yamnayans and the South Asians. The South Asian reference group here. Yamnayans and various corded ware individuals score some South Asian with multiple calculators, not just this one, multiple calculators. She's closest to Yamnaya from Samara, followed by Afanasyevo, which is pretty much the same as Yamnaya, followed by another Yamnaya from Samara. And she's actually getting modeled as a mixture of Afanasyevo plus Andronovo, or Afanasyevo plus Sintashta. So Sintashta is basically normal corded ware, like later corded ware. So she's getting modeled as a mixture of Yamnaya or Afanasyevo plus later corded ware. So she's a very Yamnaya individual. This is the conclusion we can draw from this. She's an extremely Yamnaya individual, like 80 to 90% Yamnaya. Now, this is what she scores with Ancient Eurasia K6. She's actually scoring 2.8% East Asian. Quite an exotic component. Nothing else is really that sticking out to me as much as this component, whereas she's scoring 2.8% East Asian. Not something I would expect a Yamnaya or corded ware individual to score. And she's actually getting modeled as a mixture of steppe and Neolithic, which is kind of like Khvalynsk or Repin plus Cypriot. I'm not gonna say that Khvalynsk or Repin is Proto-Indo-European, that it's PIE, but there is a lot of people who believe that in Neolithic steppe, such as Khvalynsk and Repin, is Proto-Indo-European. She's actually getting modeled as a mixture of steppe EMBA, which is kind of like actual Yamnaya plus Bulgarian, or steppe EMBA plus Romanian, so kind of a mixture of Yamnaya plus Southern European. And this is what she scores with Gedrosia K3. She's actually scoring 88% West Eurasian here. Definitely very West Eurasian, but there is a little bit of East Eurasian affinities from ancient North Eurasian A and E admixture. Thank you guys for watching my video. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Do you want to see more artificial intelligence content? Do you want to see more AI generated videos? Let me know. You can, as always, you can download the sample in 23andMe format from link which is in the description. Goodbye.